Hello there. This is my MacBook Pro 16. M4 Max, 100 odd gigs of memory. It's like a top spec MacBook Pro 16. This is the brand new ASUS ProArt P16 with a 5090. You may have seen some videos on the sort of 5070, 5060 version of this, but this is the brand new 5090 with some of the nice new features, which I'll get to in a second. But have a look at this. I am playing 9 4K 10-bit 422 videos back simultaneously in DaVinci Resolve Studio, and one is better than the other, in this particular test at least. I can see the title now, MacBook Pro Killer. No one's ever done that before. This may just be the best laptop I've ever used, I've ever tested. So not only do we have a RTX 5090 variant of the P16, but it's also the first version to come with a vapor chamber cooler to help improve cooling. Also their best screen ever. This is the ASUS Lumina Pro OLED, 4K OLED, 120Hz VRR touchscreen, and also it hits over 1,000 nits of HDR brightness. It's a bit bloody lovely, but it's also, as you would expect, a bit bloody expensive as well. More on that in a second. So a big thank you to ASUS for sending this out for me to have a play with, but let's also bring in last year's P16. Here's one I made earlier. The problem with the P16s previously, even though they look near enough identical, and also they use the same processor, is this was limited to a 60Hz screen, and ASUS were all like, well, you know, professionals and creators, they don't care that much about high frame rates, that's more for gaming. No, everyone loves smoothness, so I'm very pleased to see that they've given us not only 120Hz, but also VRR with a new panel, and it's also brighter and other things we'll talk about in a second. But this also topped out at a 4070, which is still very capable, but not exactly flagship territory for a creator workstation pro level laptops. So much nicer screen, much better performance with a 5090 option. Ideal for your rendering, blendering, developing, editing, you know, programs that generally will eat all the video memory they can get. And particularly for you video editors out there, thanks to all that GPU power, the extra hardware decoders, and 4 times as many NVENC AV1 encoders, which are also faster, versus last year's 4070. Just to give you a little idea of how fast this is, it completed a DaVinci export 2.5 times faster than the P16 with the 4070, and it was twice as fast in Premiere Pro. It's not too shabby. So that's number 1, the RTX 50 series GPUs, topping out at this brand new 5090 SKU. But number 2 is this screen. This is the ASUS Lumina Pro OLED, the best laptop screen I've ever seen, I've ever used. And to be fair, even though this is a ProArt laptop, the combination of a 5090, a high-end CPU, and a top-notch screen with 120Hz and VRR, this thing can moonlight as a pretty phenomenal gaming machine. And to top things off, number 3, the P16 is the first ProArt to get a vapor chamber cooler, which means ASUS can push the GPU from 85 watts on the old P16 with the 4070 to 105 watts MGP, or 120 watts with their 15-watt dynamic boost, all without increasing the noise or the temperatures. To be fair though, 120 watt max TGP with dynamic boost is still a fair way off what we can see from a top-end, a 5090 mobile card in a gaming laptop. Those things can hit upwards of 175 watts, but of course they are putting it in this very slim and light form factor. And if I actually bring back my MacBook Pro, the ProArt is a tiny bit thicker, is it? But it's significantly lighter, 2.15 kilograms. This 1.85. Although you can definitely see where the design inspiration came from. Yeah, pretty similar there. Although we do the dial pad and stickers. Anyway, rounding out the specs of the P16, Ryzen AI 9 HX370, that is the same processor as last year, 32 or 64 gigs of RAM, but I feel like for this kind of laptop, a 128 gig option should have been available, and also up to 4 terabytes of PCIe 4 storage. But have a look inside. You can see the new vapor chamber cooler there. We also have a very good size 90 watt-hour battery. We've also got the second M2 storage slot, which is only used if you go with the 4 terabyte model, otherwise it's empty and you can upgrade yourself. So yes, you can upgrade the storage, but sadly not the memory. You're stuck with a max of 64 gigabytes. All wrapped up in this very sleek all aluminium chassis in this nano black color. MacBook similarities to one side, I think it looks great, this thing. Really understated, simple, smart, elegant. A little bit like me. I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to pull this sticker off. We're gonna shoot B-roll with it, but there we go. Much better. So yes, a little bit fingerprinty on the back there, and very understated. I mean, you can't get more understated than that, which either you'll love because there's no crazy flashing RGBs and you can definitely take this to the office, or it could have done with a little bit of flair, like on their ZenBooks. Excellent range of ports though, including HDMI 2.1, we have a full-size SD card reader. They also use their own proprietary charging port, which is designed for the fastest charging with the highest wattage, and it kind of looks like a fatter USB-C. And speaking of fatter, the power brick for this thing is quite big. Now, I think it's fair to say there are two types of people in this world. Those who don't want a numpad on their keyboard because they don't really use it very often and they don't like the fact that it pushes the keys off center, which means the central touchpad is off and you have to move your hand over and it takes up space that could be used better for speakers. And if you are going to use a numpad, you'd probably use a separate external keyboard anyway. And then there's those who do want a numpad. And those people are wrong. So I'm very pleased to say that no numpad here, personal preference of mine, and we do have some terrific speakers on the side. They also could not have fit a bigger touchpad in there. Look at the size of that thing. We've also got their dial pad in the top left corner here, which is a nifty little multi-function input, so you can sort of scroll through your timeline, you can rotate to adjust the brightness or volume, you can customize what it does. Doesn't get in the way if you don't use it, but a nice option. It's a lovely trackpad, but it is a diving board design rather than a force touch haptic feedback, whatever the digital one is. So you can press it more easily at the bottom than you can at the top. But it's not bad by any stretch, and I absolutely love this keyboard. Really, really good key travel, excellent space, thanks to not having a numpad. Feels very similar to my MacBook. Even sounds similar, if I'm honest. So yeah, thumbs up for the keyboard and trackpad. But before we talk about just how fast this thing is, can we just talk about the screen again for a second? So as I said earlier, this is 4K OLED, 1000 nits of peak HDR brightness. Actually, I tested much higher than that. But this is exclusive to the 5090 SKU. If you go for the 5070, 5060, then you get a 3K resolution and a 500 nit brightness. The display True Black 500 nits. That gets their Lumina OLED display. This is the Lumina Pro OLED. So the bump up to 4K, the bump up in brightness. So essentially, if you want the best screen, then you have to spend the most and get the 5090 SKU. However, they are all touchscreen with stylus support, they are all OLED, 120Hz, and they're Pantone validated. But on this Lumina Pro OLED, I measured 100% DCI-P3 and sRGB gamut coverage with a delta E of under 1, so it's excellent for color-sensitive work. You're also looking at around 500 nits in SDR, well over 1000 nits in HDR, and you really can see just how much brighter it is versus the old P16, and also my MacBook Pro, which of course still has a mini LED non-touch screen. And crucially, unlike my iPhone, this thing stays bright. In my 5-minute test, it didn't dim at all. Plus, it's Visa True Black 1000 certified with near perfect blacks, incredible contrast ratio. This is officially the best laptop screen I've ever seen. And if I bring my MacBook Pro in again, if we pointed at my window, there we are, nice little window. Now, this isn't the nano-textured MacBook Pro, which you can spend, I think, a couple of hundred extra on, which will help reduce those reflections, but it also gives it kind of a mattified effect, and actually, when viewed off angle, can quite significantly reduce the contrast. But then look at that. The reflections are so much better on here. The TUV blue light something also reduces the blue light by 70%. So yeah, looks great, beautiful screen, lovely range of ports, everything's great so far. But if you're gonna buy this laptop with the 5090 and spend quite a lot of money, I'll tell you exactly how much it is at the end, you want it to be pretty fast, right? So let's put it to the test. And versus last year's P16 with the 4070, in my 10-minute 4K 422 AV1 video export test, the new P16 was 2.5 times faster, and it was twice as fast in Premiere Pro for an H.264 export. And in the Puget benchmarks, the new P16 scored almost a third higher in Premiere and almost 50% higher in DaVinci. Then firing up Blender, and in my own test of seeing how long it takes to render 500 frames, the new P16 finished 26% quicker. But then in Geekbench, the 5090 was over 60% faster than the last gen P16 in the OpenCL test, and up to twice as fast in the Blender benchmark. Impressive, even if my real-world use case didn't quite get those numbers, but it was also 80% faster in 3D Mark Steel Nomad. And as for gaming, in F125 running at 1200p, Ultra Max settings, DLSS, and of course multi-frame generation, exclusive to the new 50 series, the 5090 P16 averaged over double the frame rate. And it was a similar story in Cyberpunk using RT Ultra settings. You can comfortably max out the 120Hz refresh rate, even in the super demanding overdrive mode. And as for thermals, neither this or indeed the old P16 got all that hot, with comfortable temperatures across the keyboard and the palm rest. And there's definitely less CPU throttling with this new model, which was obvious from the 3D Mark results. And while my MacBook Pro generally stays quieter than basically any Windows laptop, neither ProArt got offensively loud. The only downside, the only downgrade I've experienced with this new 5090 ProArt P16 is the battery life. It's still good, we have a healthy 90 watt-hour battery, but in my YouTube stream test versus last year's 4070, the new one lasted 5 hours and 20, the old one about 6 hours. And running a loop of PC Mark, the new P16 lost 20%, whereas the older one lost around 11%. So with everyday, normal, general use, nothing super demanding, you'll probably get about 6 hours of use out of this, which is absolutely fine in my book. It's not quite MacBook Pro level, but no one can really compete with Apple in terms of efficiency with the software and the hardware and, the chip. They build everything, that vertical integration. But for a Windows workstation, Pro creator, laptop thing, the battery is still pretty decent. And actually, I think most of the time, realistically, you're going to want to have this plugged in to get the best performance out of it anyway. I also noticed how the new P16 loads faster. In fact, it loaded the F125 benchmark in under half the time, with read and write speeds being around a third faster overall. Not bad. As usual though, the webcam leaves a little bit to be desired. We do have an IR blaster for face unlocking with Windows Hello, but the quality, a bit average. It's fine, hello cameraman Pete, but I think you'll probably want to use an external camera. Oh, and just to finish, there are a couple of nifty extras worth having a play with. We've got ASUS's Story Cube, which is an AI media hub app. The idea is to have all your stuff in one place, so finding what you want is simpler and faster, and it uses on-device AI. It doesn't need access to the cloud, and it's free. ASUS have also teamed up with GoPro, and actually this Story Cube now supports GoPro cloud integration. Really helpful for sorting through all your footage, and if you do buy this ProArt, or in fact any ProArt, ASUS will throw in 6 months of GoPro Premium Plus for free, which I think is worth $50 or so. So let's wrap this up. The new ASUS ProArt P16. This is an incredible laptop, and basically with this model we're looking at better graphics, better cooling, better screen. Downside, well, same chip as last year, still very capable, but no upgrade there. Also, I still think 128 gigs of memory should be an option for this kind of laptop. The battery has taken a slight hit, and it's very expensive. This model here, this 5090 with 64 gigs of RAM, 4 terabytes of storage, the top spec one, £4,800, just shy of £5,000, which is very much in the M4 Max MacBook Pro 16 territory. Once you start speccing that up, particularly in terms of storage, it's actually about on par. So this comes down to, do you need the performance of the 5090 and all the RTX benefits that comes with it, and in a pretty portable form factor like this? If so, and most likely if you're buying on your business, then this is definitely worth considering. This is as close, as the cliche goes, to a MacBook Pro killer as we've seen. I think for me though, I would save an awful lot of money and maybe go for the 5070 variant or the 5060 variant. It's a good £2,500 less. Yes, you're not getting quite the same performance and the screen isn't as bright or as sharp, as I say, 3K 500 nits rather than 4K 1000 nits, but it's significantly cheaper, and I think for most use cases, still plenty fast enough. So I'll leave a link below to ASUS's website where you can spec them and have a look at the different options. Definitely worth considering. But what do you make of the ProArts? Would you be tempted to buy one? If you've got any questions as well, drop a comment below. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time right here on Tech Chat.